In a land where kings were warriors and crowns were heavy with blood, there lived a ruler whose story would echo for generations. They called him the Lion of the East. A king who never lost a battle, a man whose voice could silence an army. Yet his greatest enemy was not a rival kingdom, nor the strike of a sword, but a wound no blade had given him. A wound that would not heal, a wound that whispered of curses older than time itself. This is the tale of the king with the wound, and the sacrifice that bound a nation. It began on a night of joy. The palace was alive with drums, their rhythm carrying far beyond the walls, reaching the ears of farmers, hunters, and children. Torches lit the courtyard, flames flickering like restless spirits. The king stood tall on the steps of his throne, his robe woven with gold, his staff glistening beneath the firelight. He raised it high and declared, "Tonight, we dance for the harvest, for the gods, for our people." The crowd erupted in cheers. Dancers spun in circles, beads clashing like rain on rooftops. The air was thick with roasted yam, palm wine, and the sweet laughter of children chasing one another between the drums. But in the midst of joy, silence came. The king staggered. His hand dropped from the staff, trembling. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His other hand clutched his side. And when he drew it away, the people saw red blood streaming, staining his robe. The wound burned faintly, glowing beneath his skin as though fire lived inside him. "No arrow touched him," a man cried. "No spear pierced his flesh," whispered another. Mothers pulled their children close. The dancers froze, anklets stilling mid-step. The king's eyes were fierce, but his voice strained. "The feast is over. Return to your homes." The drums fell silent. The laughter died, and a shadow fell over the kingdom. The wound did not heal. By day, the king sat tall upon his throne, but his face grew pale, and his grip upon his staff tightened. By night, the palace echoed with cries of pain, cries muffled by the walls but carried through the corridors like restless ghosts. His guards exchanged fearful glances, yet none dared speak. For how could they? Who would dare question the Lion of the East? But the people saw. The markets grew quiet. The blacksmith hammered slower, his ears listening for palace news. Women whispered at the wells. "It is witchcraft," one said. "It is the wrath of the gods," muttered another. Children stopped playing in the courtyards, their laughter stolen by fear. The kingdom, once alive with pride, now held its breath. One night, as the moon painted the palace silver, the council gathered. Torches flickered nervously, shadows crawling across the walls like restless spirits. The royal priest, his beard white as ash, stepped forward. He bowed low, but his voice trembled. "My king, this wound is not of flesh. No healer's hand can mend it. This is something older, something darker." The king's eyes narrowed. His voice was hoarse but steady. "Then speak it. Do not tremble in riddles. What is it the gods demand?" The priest unrolled a scroll, its edges brittle with age. He held it to the torchlight, and the words seemed to breathe. "It is written," he whispered. "A king shall bleed for the sins of those before him. A wound of the spirit shall mark him. It will not heal until the debt of the ancestors is paid." The council gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others covered their faces. An elder muttered, "Then we are cursed." But the king did not move. His gaze was fixed upon the fire. His jaw clenched, and in the silence he whispered to himself, "So, this is the price of kingship." Outside the palace walls, the whispers grew louder. Fear spread like smoke, and though no enemy had invaded, the kingdom trembled as though already under siege. News of the king's wound spread beyond the palace walls, carried by traders, hunters, and wandering minstrels. By the seventh night, the tale had reached the mountains, where a woman known only as Naya lived. She was not of the court, nor of noble blood, but her name was spoken in whispers, for she was a healer who knew the language of the earth. They said she could call rivers to rise, that trees bent their branches when she prayed. Some feared her, some revered her, but all agreed, She was the last hope for the king. At dawn, the palace gates creaked open, and she arrived. Her steps were slow, her robes plain, her eyes deep like still water. The guards crossed their spears, unwilling to let her through, until the king himself spoke from within the courtyard. "Let her enter. No spear shall deny the hand that brings healing." Naya stepped into the throne room. The air was thick with incense, prayers clinging to the walls like cobwebs. She knelt before the king, her gaze steady. "Show me the wound," she said softly. The king pulled aside his robe. Gasps filled the chamber. The wound burned like fire beneath his skin, its glow pulsing with every heartbeat, veins around it dark as night. Naya did not flinch. She touched the air above it, not the skin itself, and her voice sank into a whisper only the spirits could hear. "This is no wound of man," she said. "This is a chain. The blood of your fathers binds you. If it is not broken, it will consume not just you, but your throne and your people." The council erupted in cries. "Chains of blood? Impossible! This is blasphemy!" But the king silenced them with a raised hand. His voice, though weak, carried authority. "Tell me, healer, how does one break chains forged by the dead?" Naya's eyes closed, her lips trembling with ancient words. When she opened them again, her gaze was heavy. "By walking into the world of the dead and returning." The room froze, the torches crackled, their flames bending as though listening. Even the shadows seemed to lean closer. One of the elders spat in fear. "No man returns from the land of the dead." Another shook his head, clutching his staff. "Better we crown his son than risk the whole kingdom on foolishness." But Naya's voice cut through the protests. "This is the only way. The wound is not of flesh but of spirit. He must journey where the spirits dwell, where the sins of kings past cry for justice. There he will face them. If he returns, the wound will close. If he fails, his soul will never walk among the living again." The king listened in silence. Pain carved lines into his face, yet his eyes burned with the fire of a warrior. Slowly he rose to his feet. The wound bled fresh, staining his robe, but he did not falter. "Then I will go," he declared. "For a king does not choose his battles. The gods do, and I will not bow to fear." The council fell silent. Even the priest lowered his gaze, for in that moment, the Lion of the East was still their king. Naya's voice softened. "You will need guides. Not warriors of flesh, but spirits willing to walk beside you. At the river 3 nights from now, they will reveal themselves. You must go alone." The king nodded. "Then alone I shall go." That night the palace did not sleep. Whispers carried through its halls like restless birds. Servants wept in secret. Soldiers sharpened blades they would not use. And in the highest chamber, the king sat alone, staring at the wound that glowed faintly upon his side, and wondered what faces awaited him in the darkness of the other world. On the 3rd night, when the moon was swollen and red like burning coal, the king left his palace. He wore no crown, no armor, no robes of silk, only a plain cloth around his waist and a staff of wood. Naya walked behind him in silence, her steps soft as shadow, carrying nothing but a gourd of water. The guards begged to follow, the council pleaded, but the king raised his hand. "This path is mine alone. Wait here, and if I do not return, remember me not as the wounded, but as the one who dared." The journey was long, through forests where owls cried with voices like mourning mothers, across fields where the grass bowed as if to unseen kings. At last they reached the river. It was unlike any water the king had known. The surface was still, like a mirror, yet beneath it, shadows writhed as though the dead themselves moved within. Mist curled above it, whispering voices without tongues. Naya knelt by the bank. "Here," she said, her voice trembling though her eyes remained firm. "The river of spirits. It lies between the breath of the living and the silence of the dead. Step into it, and you will not return the same." The king placed a hand upon her shoulder. "If I do not return at all, guide my people well. Naya bowed her head, unable to speak. The king stepped forward. The water was cold, colder than the deepest mountain caves, yet it did not wet his skin. Instead, it clung to him like smoke. With each step, the world around him dimmed. The cries of night birds grew faint. The ground beneath vanished. And then, with a sound like thunder muffled in earth, the river swallowed him whole. Darkness, endless, suffocating, alive. The king floated, or perhaps fell, he could not tell. Whispers filled his ears, hundreds of voices, some crying, some laughing, some screaming his name. His wound burned brighter than ever, a beacon that lit the abyss. Shapes emerged around him, faces without flesh, eyes like hollow suns. The ancestors. One voice broke through the chaos, deep, echoing, filled with grief and rage. Son of the throne, why have you come? The king steadied himself, though fear clawed at his heart. I come for freedom. This wound is not mine, but it bleeds through me. Tell me what curse binds it. The shadows shifted. A figure stepped forward, taller than any man, cloaked in ash, his crown broken. It was the first king, the founder of the line. His face was carved with scars, his hands dripping blood that vanished before it touched the ground. His voice was thunder made flesh. We took what was not ours. Land, lives, blood. The earth remembers, though we do not. Each king bears the weight, each wound growing deeper. You are its vessel. The king's chest heaved. Then tell me how to end it. The ancestors' hollow eyes burned. End it? No, child. To break chains of blood, you must give blood. A sacrifice greater than the sins themselves. Will you pay the price? Will you bleed not for yourself, but for every crown that came before you? The abyss trembled, the whispers rising to screams. The king's wound flared, searing through bone. He fell to his knees, gasping, yet his voice did not break. If my life is the price, I will give it. For I am not king for myself, but for them. The shadows froze, the cries fell silent. And from the darkness, unseen hands reached out, dragging him deeper into the realm of the dead. The hands of the dead pulled him down. Yet when the king opened his eyes, he no longer floated in darkness. He stood in a vast plain where the sky burned red and the earth cracked like dry bone. The air stank of smoke and sorrow. All around him, countless figures wandered, the forgotten, the restless, the condemned. A voice rang in the stillness. To free the living, you must face the dead. 3 shapes emerged before him. The first was a woman holding a child, her face hollow, her arms outstretched. Her whisper pierced him. You took our land. My child died with no place to rest. Will you carry my grief? The second was a warrior, his chest torn open, spear still lodged in his ribs. He roared. Your crown bathed in my blood. My tribe vanished. Will you bear my vengeance? The third was a boy no older than 12, his eyes wide with sorrow. I was sacrificed for rain that never came. Will you carry my innocence? The king's knees weakened. Each figure's voice was weight upon his heart, each memory a knife. His wound throbbed so violently that blood poured into the soil at his feet. Yet he raised his head and spoke. Yes, I will carry it, all of it, for their pain must not echo into my children's children. The plain shook, the spirits wailed. The woman, the warrior, and the boy dissolved into smoke, their voices fading into the wind. But the king's wound flared brighter than ever, a fire threatening to consume him whole. The plain crumbled, the sky split. The king staggered and found himself before a river of molten fire, and across it stood a mirror, tall, cracked, and shimmering with light. Yet when the king gazed upon it, he did not see his face. He saw his fear. In the mirror he was a broken ruler. His people starved, his children cursed, his name spat with hatred. His wound had grown into a gaping hole, devouring him and everything around him. He tried to look away, but the mirror pulled him closer. The voice of the ancestor thundered again. This is what awaits if you fail. Do you still wish to bear the wound? The king's breath came heavy. His reflection reached through the mirror, its hand bloody and trembling. For a moment he faltered. Fear gnawed at him. Could he truly save them? Or was he only damning them further? Then, with a roar that shook the abyss, he seized the hand of his reflection and crushed it. The mirror shattered into 1,000 shards, each screaming as they fell into the fire. The river boiled and split apart, and the king stumbled forward, his body racked with pain, yet his eyes burning with defiance. The spirits around him bowed low, whispering as one. He bears the wound, and yet he endures. The fire faded. The plane of shadows melted away, and the king found himself in a quiet chamber of stone. At its center stood a throne carved from bone, and upon it rested a single crown. Blackened, pulsing, alive, a whisper filled the chamber. To where it is to end the curse. But know this, king of men, the wound will not heal. It will claim you instead. The king staggered closer, blood dripping from his side, each drop echoing against the floor like the beating of war drums. His wound blazed, brighter than fire, brighter than the sun. He reached for the crown, and froze, for in its reflection he saw his children's faces. Their laughter, their fear, their hope. He knew what must be done. He raised the crown not to his head, but to the sky, and with a cry that split the darkness, he hurled it into the void. The chamber shook, the bones cracked, and the voice screamed in fury, "Fool! You deny the price. You deny the pact." The wound tore open, spilling not just blood, but light, blinding, searing, pure. The spirits shrieked, recoiling. The chamber crumbled around him, and still, the king stood, his body burning from within, his spirit unraveling. Yet his voice thundered, "If my people are to live, let it be by my pain, not theirs." The ground split open. From the wound in his side, light burst forth like a river, flooding the chamber, pouring into the earth itself. It rushed through the cracks of the world, into the fields of his kingdom, into the homes of his people. Crops bloomed where ash had lain. Rivers flowed where dust had ruled. The cries of children turned into laughter. And far away, in the king's palace, the healers gasped, for the wound that had cursed the land now beat like a second sun within their ruler's chest. The spirits bowed low, their voices trembling. The king has chosen. The curse is broken. But his life is the price. The king, now barely standing, smiled. For the first time since the wound, he felt no pain, only peace. As the chamber collapsed around him, he whispered, "Let them remember me not as a ruler with a crown, but as a man with a wound, who chose to bear it." When the people awoke the next morning, the land was reborn. The air smelled of rain. The soil pulsed with life. And upon the palace steps, where the king should have stood, there was only a mark, a single pool of light in the shape of his crown. The elders spoke of him as the wounded king, the one who defied the spirits and paid with his flesh so his people might live. His story became a warning. His story became a prayer. His story became legend. And it is said that when the night is darkest and the earth trembles, if you listen closely, you will hear his voice, not crying, not broken, but strong, whispering still, "I bore the wound, so you would not have to." The fire dies, the drums fade, and the tale ends. But the wound? The wound is never forgotten.